Hi everyone! Today I'm doing something really exciting to me, which is that I'm going to be talking about a book that I really enjoyed. Let me start out by saying I'm not a book reviewer and I don't intend to analyze or criticize this book that I'm going to be speaking about today. What I want to do in this video is appreciate this book. So the book I'm speaking about is called Educated by Tara Westover. I started reading the book because it was a selection by my friends. I'm in a book club that consists of 3 people. I also want to start out by saying that during this quarantine and this economic shutdown, I'm very privileged and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to, give some space mentally and emotionally for anyone watching. Leave space for those people that are not privileged. The reason I could have finished this book was because, yes, I'm not working due to this economic shutdown, but I'm really privileged. I have a safe home. I have food on the table, so I have peace of mind. I have a calm heart, and I have now this space and time to create and to do the things that I've been wanting to do, but maybe have been fearful to do. And there's a lot of people that are not experiencing the quarantine and the economic shutdown the way that I am. So I'm really thankful that I'm privileged, and I am praying for all those people out there who are not, who, are worried, who can't even take their next breath without tears forming in their eyes. So we're thinking of you. So I want to share what I'm going to take away from this book with me as I, close it and put it back on the shelf. It's very easy to become overwhelmed by this story because it's a super unique story. It's a hell of a story. It's good for a movie, and a lot of our lives are not movies. So sometimes it's hard for us to find ourselves in the stories that we're reading and to find something that we can take away with us. So I want to help you with that today. So one takeaway from me was work ethic and discipline. Work ethic and discipline, they are both a journey that you will have only with yourself. And that journey really starts and will always be rooted in the basic, boring, rudimental things that you need to do, like opening a textbook, like practicing some formulas and some math problems. And I really like that in this book, Tara on various occasions shares those moments with us. So one of the first moments where I was like, okay, I need to pay attention because there's a lot of takeaway from this book, was on page 46. She says, "Learning in our family was entirely self-directed. You could learn anything you could teach yourself after your work was done. Some of us were more disciplined than others. I was one of the least disciplined." So I like that line because she is saying that there was no structure for her. There was no example for her. And in the beginning, she was not that interested in learning. But as we read the book, we see a change in her. And I like that word, self-directed. I think that as we get older, we start learning what our passions are. And we might find that those passions don't align with where we're working or where we're studying or what classes we're taking. And so at that point, you need to become self-directed and self-reliant. And you need to create like a curriculum for yourself and a pattern for yourself. And that is what Tara did her whole life. And so I love this passage that I'm going to read next on page 62. She says, "I studied religion. I read the Book of Mormon twice. I read the New Testament once quickly, then a second time more slowly, pausing to take notes, to cross-reference, and even to write short essays on doctrines like faith and sacrifice. No one read the essays. I wrote them for myself, the way I imagined Tyler had studied for himself and himself only. That is such a powerful passage. Tyler is her brother. I think he was the first person to go to college, and he really set an example for her. But I love the idea of her just writing essays just because she wanted to start developing a language for herself and expression for herself, and knowing that no one was going to read these essays. And that's really what's going to propel you in life. And trust me, I'm learning that, and I haven't fully grasped it, but what will propel you in life is doing those things that no one else can see you doing or will see you doing. And this is one of my favorite lines in the book. It's on the same page, 62. She says, "In retrospect, I see that this was my education, the one that would matter. The skill I was learning was a crucial one. The patience to read things I could not yet understand." And it's really as simple as that. When we're learning and growing, we are going to struggle with reading things that we don't understand. So I followed her examples, and before the quarantine shut down, I took out some books from the library, which shout out to the New York Public Library, because they're not charging us any late fees, and we basically get to keep these books as long as well, basically until they open again. So I took out Music Theory 101. That's because I've always wanted to learn piano, and I actually took classes 3 years ago with Miss Napua, who is a great piano teacher, Napua Devoy. And I spent a lot of time with her, but I didn't learn much because I wasn't studying when I left the classes. So I stopped taking classes because it was a financial investment, and I wasn't really giving much to it. But I want to get back to that, and I do want to return to taking classes with her once I've actually developed a habit of studying. So I took out another music book as well. I took out Small Business Taxes 2020, because if I'm going to be an artist, I need to create an LLC and make sure that the expenses I'm putting towards my music career, come back in some form, that I can get some tax credit for them. I took out the index card, why personal finance doesn't have to be complicated, because again, I guess it ties into like the small business taxes, but I have been struggling with being financially savvy and really setting up a foundation for myself to, have some cushion if I want to study or take a new class or invest in myself. And I took out Creative Quest by Questlove, because he's a musical genius, and he is like a walking encyclopedia of music. A lot of people are, but he's one of the more modern ones, right? One of the contemporary ones that I can look up to and study. So we see her writing essays on faith, and then on page 124, this is later on once Tyler has spoken to her. So Tyler, on page 123, she says, "I can't take the test. I don't know any math." And Tyler says, "You got money, buy books and learn it." So it's really as simple as that. Like, come on, just get the tools and start shoveling, I guess, right? So once she has bought the books, she says, "Every night for a month, I sat in the opera house in a chair of red velvet and practiced the most basic operations: how to multiply fractions, how to use a reciprocal, how to add and multiply and divide with decimals, while on the stage characters recited their lines." So for anyone reading the book, she is also a singer, and so she, for a while, was a part of the musicals in her town. And once she stopped being a part of those musicals, she would still return to that theater, and while they were practicing, she would study every night her math textbooks to prepare herself to take the act and go to college. Because yes, if you've read the book, she was homeschooled, but not really. And homeschool children can take the act test, I guess, to get into college. That wasn't my experience, so I'm reading it based off of hers. And so yeah, again, just that moment of like, it's really as simple as just making the time, carving the time out, getting that book in front of you and reading, digesting the material, practicing the material over and over again. So I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm really into primary sources. That was really big in high school in English class with our MLA format essays. And I always really enjoyed that, finding the perfect quotes to prove my theory or my thesis. And so that's why I find it enjoyable to read directly from the book, and that's probably what's going to make this video longer than it needs to be. But again, we are here to appreciate this book. So again, another moment, fast forward to the future. Oh no, this is not college yet. So still another moment where she is starting to take those daily actions to really absorb the knowledge that she needs to have to get into college. On page 134, she says, I woke up every morning at 6 to study because it was easier to focus in the mornings before I was worn out from scrapping. This is an important sentence as well, because it's not only that she was carving time out to study, but she was carving time out on top of her other responsibilities because her dad expected her to work in the junkyard. And so the only time that she could study without it being a problem to her father, without it interfering with her obligations to him, was at 6 a.m. in the morning. And then we'll fast forward to page 257. And on this page, she's in college. And she says, I studied most mornings in the college library near a small window. And I remember going to college and not always going to the library, or going to the library for like 40 minutes, you know, kind of situating yourself, then getting a text from your friend saying, hey, like, what are you doing? Let's go get food. And so that sentence resonates with me because, again, it was like those moments where I failed to do those little things, like just go to the library and study. And so I really appreciate all her examples of work ethic in the simplest form. And then I will fast forward to, or backtrack to page 150. It's a tiny moment, but on page 150, she says, I noticed when Tyler came home for Christmas that he was reading a book called Les Miserables, and I decided that it must be the kind of a book a college student reads. I bought my own copy, hoping it would teach me about history or literature. I really like this moment because you can see that she's allowing curiosity to lead her. And I think when you don't study, or you know, when you haven't practiced the act of learning something completely new, everything is terrifying and you're afraid of everything, and you'd rather watch TV than try to learn something new. So I think that as you continue to learn how to study, it allows your curiosity to really grow. Let me see what else. I have some notes, so I'm referring back to them. Oh yeah, this is on page 297. Again, to build on that point of curiosity, she says, the university seemed to offer a new beginning, and I intended to take it. I enrolled in every course I could squeeze into my schedule, from German idealism to the history of secularism to ethics and law. I joined a weekly study group to practice French and another to learn knitting. The graduate school offered a free course on charcoal sketching. I had never drawn in my life, but I signed up for that too. And I really like this part as well because she's not afraid of learning something new. She's not afraid of being in an uncomfortable space because she's already done it before. And, you know, I guess curiosity is a learned skill as well. You have to practice it in order to maintain it. So that was about work ethic and discipline. Next, I want to go into investing in yourself / being resourceful. And for this part of my appreciation towards her story, I will also be talking about her mother. Even though her mother shows up basically throughout the entire story, we don't hear the mother's voice. It's all from Tara's point of view. But I wanna highlight the mom because there are some special moments there about the mom. So investing in yourself. I want to go back to the moment where Tyler says, "You've got money, buy books and learn it." On the next page, 124, she says, "The next day I drove 40 miles to the nearest bookstore and bought a glossy ACT study guide. I sat on my bed and turned to the mathematics practice test. I scanned the first page. It wasn't that I didn't know how to solve the equations. I didn't recognize the symbols. It was the same on the second page and the third." She took the test to her mother. Her mother doesn't understand what's going on. "So the next day, I drove the same 40 miles, 80 round trip, and returned home with a large algebra textbook." That is investing in yourself. You know, going the distance. She went the distance, 80 miles round trip, to get the first book that she thought would have everything she needed to know, until she realized it didn't, and she had to make the trip again. And it's just going out of your way for yourself. I love that passage. Where else? Where are we going next? So that was one moment where she invested in herself. I also want to highlight moments where she invested in herself in an unconventional way. She became resourceful. So on page 76, she starts talking about how she no longer wants to work with her dad, and how her sister Audrey got a job in town and has been able to make a living that way and stay away from home. So she decides she's going to babysit. And so she babysits the daughter of, or the child of a woman named Mary. And while babysitting for Mary, she finds out that Mary knows how to play the piano gracefully and beautifully. So she says, "The next day when Mary returned from the school, I asked her if instead of money, she would give me lessons." So that's a way where you can invest in yourself. You might not have the money, but maybe you're providing a service for someone, and instead of being paid, with money for that service, you can ask for their knowledge, for their time, for their mentorship. And that's just her thinking out the box, making the most of what she had. And next I want to talk about the mom on page 18, right? So we learned that the mother midwives, because the father or her husband, the mother's husband, has encouraged her to midwife, and she is not confident at the beginning in this role, and we see her grow in this role and become, I guess an expert at midwifing. And on page 18, Tyra says, "Mother also used the money to improve herself as a midwife. She bought an oxygen tank in case a baby came out and couldn't breathe, and she took a suturing class so she could stitch the woman who tore. Judy always sent women to the hospital for stitches, but Mother was determined to learn. Self-reliance," I imagine her thinking. And so for all that we think about their parents, right? I know we're condemning them, who's ever read this book. Her mom had those qualities that you need to succeed, which is being self-reliant, being resourceful, looking for ways to improve yourself and the craft that you're partaking in. On page 58, again, speaking about the mother, when after her mom has suffered from a brain injury, she has to basically pivot. She has to be confident and creative and pivot the way she's making money, pivot her knowledge to something new. So she can't really midwife at this time because she's experiencing a lot of migraines from the brain injury. So on page 58 into page 59, Tara writes, diagrams of chakras and pressure points appeared around the house, and she began charging clients for something called energy work. So these diagrams of chakras and pressure points, that is her investing in herself, in increasing her knowledge. And then also her charging clients for something called energy work. That's her being creative, and looking for a new outlet, a new arena for her to showcase some talent and make a living. That's really what it comes down to sometimes, making a living, but hopefully making a living in a way that allows you to be your fullest self. And we can fast forward to page 321, where we find out that her mom's business is booming, that her mom might have millions of dollars from this business. And this is a comical sentence, so I'm going to read it. From what I'd heard, my parents were powerful people in the valley. Mother was marketing her products as a spiritual alternative to Obamacare, and she was selling product as fast as she could make it, even with dozens of employees. Obama actually put this book as one of his favorite books, I think, on his 2017 or 2019 list. And here was her mother working against Obamacare, selling her spiritual products. I like that moment because, now she's freaking on Obama's list, bestseller list. So that was my those were my points on investing in yourself and being resourceful. I want to go back to work ethic on page 307. She talks briefly about, I guess, the negativity that you can feel in your life, the lack of motivation that you can feel in your life that directly does impact your work ethic. And she says, the thing about having a mental breakdown is that no matter how obvious it is that you're having one, it is somehow not obvious to you. And she poses this question: why it's better to think yourself lazy than think yourself in distress, I'm not sure. Oh wait, that wasn't a question. The sentence started with why, so I thought it was a question. But that is basically a question. Why is it that it's better for us to think of ourselves as lazy than to think of ourselves in distress? And it made me think about the times that I've put off learning music and decided to watch a show, and I thought I was just being lazy. But it is a form of distress when you're not following your dreams, even though you want to. It's a lack of hope, and that is stressful, even if you don't realize it. And so I like that she acknowledges that there was a point in her life where she was experiencing low. And on 316 and 317, she talks about how one of the best decisions she made during her time pursuing her PhD was going to counseling. So not everything is, peachy, and everyone has struggles and battles, and she definitely had hers. Of course, while we're reading the book, all we can think of is, oh my God, this woman is superhuman. She goes from never attending school to getting a PhD from Cambridge. But that's why I really wanted to focus on those moments that we can all grasp, And on page 312, I like this part because it shows that you don't have to remain in the same place, that your life can change, and it will change if you change. And she says on page 312, when the Twin Towers had fallen 10 years before, I had never heard of Islam. Now I was drinking sugary tea with Salabia Medwind and squatting on a sand drift in Wadi Rum, the Valley of the Moon, less than 20 miles from the Saudi Arabian border. The distance, physical and mental, that had been traversed in the last decade nearly stopped my breath, and I wondered if perhaps I had changed too much. So Can you believe that? 10 years ago, she didn't know about the Twin Towers. She didn't know about Osama bin Laden. And now she was sitting in a country that practices Islam, that, you know, has ties with Osama bin Laden, where some people are for him, some people are against him. And that's just crazy to me that you don't even know about these people, and now you find yourself in their country. And obviously that's because she's changed her life, and now she's privileged and she can travel and she can be in the company of these people that are taking her to these different places, because she went to the Middle East because of Drew, who's a guy that she's dating. And so that gives me a lot of hope that your reality can change drastically, but it won't change unless you make the changes, which are not drastic. All these changes that you need to make to improve your life are small, and then eventually they become drastic, right? As they like compound over time. So now we're at the end, and I want to finish with Dr. Carey's words. Dr. Carey is her advisor during her time at Cambridge when she's pursuing her PhD. I am going to read his words verbatim because I can't say it any better myself. So, actually, let me read it from the book. I wrote it down because I thought it'd be more accessible, but I'll just read it from the book. It's on page 242. And then I'm going to end with a sentence on page 230 that's also from Dr. Carey. Okay. I need to reposition myself. Okay, it says, "You are not fool's gold, shining only under a particular light. Whomever you become, whatever you make yourself into, that is who you always were. It was always in you, not in Cambridge. In you. You are gold. I think you should stretch yourself. See what happens." The end. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of appreciation of the book Educated. Let me know what you're reading. Comment below. If you have any suggestions of what book I should appreciate next, please let me know. I'm going to now enjoy my Jolly Ranchers, because as my boyfriend was setting up for this video, which took a long time, can you imagine that production takes longer sometimes than the actual footage that you're creating or content you're creating? So I really appreciated his efforts, but I was just hungry sitting here while I was waiting for him to set it up. And I was like, oh, I'll just have a little Jolly Rancher. But then I remembered that it would turn my tongue blue or red. So thank God that for once I had that foresight to not do that. So I'll see you soon. Bye.